Today's webinar will be focusing on Campaign Manager and PAC Manager kind of basic financial data entry. Also, we'll be mainly doing data entry in Campaign Manager, but just know that if you're working in PAC Manager, the features should be the same. All right, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and log into Campaign Manager right now. Okay, so the first thing I will be showing you is how to enter a receipt or contribution transaction in a record. To do so, you would simply just go to Records, go to Name Search, and then type in the record that you're looking for. In this case, I will be looking for myself. Okay. As you can see, I've entered a couple of sample contributions already in here, which is why there's a check mark. One thing to note is that if there's anything in any of these subfiles, there would be a check mark into it or on it, so that you can, if you click on it, you can quickly see that there are a couple of entries in there. So for contributions, you want to double click into this gray field right now. And then the most recent transaction should be listed, or the previous transaction should be listed, or whichever transaction you decide to click on. As you can see, you can make any edits to any of these transactions. You can change the period, what type of contribution this is for, the check number, the amount, and then anything that you've changed, you want to make sure when you exit out, you hit the yes button. And then as you can see, the period changed to general. For now, I'll just change that back to primary. Now, to add a new receipt or contribution, what you want to do is go ahead and double click. And then when the contribution edit screen comes up, what you want to do is go ahead and scroll your mouse all the way to the top right here and hit this plus sign. If you mouse over it, it will say Add New Contribution Record. If you do that, you'll notice that up here, there'll be a new line that you're about to enter. Everything should be blanked out except for the date, which automatically will come back to today's date. And then the period and the type of receipt will mimic what you were copying, what record was already in here. So since we came from a receipt for the primary election, those two fields are automatically in there already. So as you're entering the contribution, you always want to enter the date that you received the contribution. So if you received this just yesterday, you would put yesterday's date. And then for the amount, you would simply just enter the dollar amount. In this case, we'll just put an arbitrary $450. If it's a check number, you can always enter the check number there. The check number is also used, now later on I will demonstrate this, to link certain transactions together as well. I will get to that later on in the demonstration. For the period, if you can select whether it's for the general period or the primary for the primary period. For the type, you can see we have quite a few selections for the type of contributions that you can label the receipt as. Typically, you would choose receipts for any kind of general transactions. There are also memo transactions that you can label the contribution as, and memo transactions will pull onto your FEC report, but will not have an actual dollar value that will affect any of your totals. Another thing to note is that since we are doing basic financial data entry, since there are so many types of financial transactions, unfortunately there isn't enough time to go through every single type of transactions. That being said, when you have Campaign Manager and PAC Manager, there is a manual that you can download, and within that manual it has every single transactions that you could possibly think of that you would need to enter for reporting purposes. And of course, if you ever have any questions on how specific transactions need to be pulled, you can always call our customer support line. Okay. The note field is basically if you need to add specific reporting descriptions for your state or federal report. This is where it would pull from. So anything that you type into the note field will also appear on your report. That being said, there are a couple of things that you can enter into the note field that are kind of like key phrases that will do a few things. For example, and again later on I will demonstrate this even further, for credit card transactions where you are paying one vendor but need to show sub-vendors that the credit card is paying for. You would need to type in credit card, see below. And then typing this will help on your report. It will show that this is the main credit card transaction, and it will, right below it should be listed the sub-vendors. And again, I'll show this on an actual credit card transaction, and at the end, or towards the end, I will pull an actual FEC report and show you how it will appear on the report as we're entering these contributions and disbursements into Campaign Manager. Now, a key thing to note is that a lot of you might run into financial transactions where it's below the itemization threshold, but for whatever reason, the contribution or the disbursement still needs to appear on the report. Well, instead of changing, and later on, again, I will show you, instead of changing the minimum threshold to whatever the dollar amount could be, for example, the FEC generally requires you to list anything that's $200 or more. So instead of changing the threshold to $1 or $100 and thus showing more than you need to, if you need to show a specific transaction onto the report that's below the threshold, for example, if I change this to, let's say, $25. So for the aggregate threshold, that wouldn't meet the aggregate threshold that normally is set. So to show a contribution or disbursement on the report that doesn't meet the threshold, you simply type in the word itemize in the note field. Make sure it's all in capital letters, and then of course that it's spelled correctly. And then this will force itemize any contribution or disbursements that you wish to show on your report. On top of that, the itemized word itself will not show up in the report. And if you ever do need to type additional descriptions for the contributions or disbursement, you would simply type in itemize, the word itemize first, and then put a colon, and then continue typing whatever description that you would wish to pull into the report, such as this is a test. Okay. And then, of course, to save the record, you can either A, hit the X button, which will produce a window asking you if you wish to save the transaction, or you can mouse up to the top over here and click Save Changes. And as you can see, this popularized with the note here. Okay. And then once you exit the current selection, again, it will ask you to save any changes. Of course, you would just say yes. Next, I'll show you how to enter a disbursement, which is pretty similar to adding a receipt. So we'll go back to records, do our name search. This time I'll use someone else. And then we'll go ahead and click on disbursements. Now, again, when entering a new disbursement, when entering the disbursement kind, again, there are quite a few options for you to choose from. And because we're restricted with time, I'm just going to show you how to do the typical transaction, which is operating expenditure. This is basically the disbursement or receipt version of it. And again, when entering a new disbursement, the same fields are pretty much available. You have a purpose field where you can, again, enter the first itemized keyword or just a brief description of the disbursement. A key thing here is under disbursement, there's an item number field. So this item number field is actually used to link transactions. A key thing would be a credit card transaction. Typically, when you have credit card transactions, you'll be using the item field to link the transaction. And again, I know I keep referring to that I'll be showing this to you later, but just want to make sure that you guys will know that I will get to this later. You can always have the check number, which is also used to link a specific transaction together. And then you would just enter the dollar amount. We'll go with 600. And then you don't necessarily have to enter the check number if I always do. Then you can type in whatever you like under the purpose. And we just say for travel expense. And save changes. Okay. Now the next thing I will show you is how to pull two different types of lists in Campaign Manager or PAC Manager. These two lists are called the Receipt Transactions List and the Disbursement Transaction List. These two lists are very useful for when you need to see a list of all specific transactions within a time frame, just to compare to perhaps your FEC report. Maybe something is pulling incorrectly or something's not matching with your bank statement. These two reports are very useful when you need to go line by line to figure out what is incorrect. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and do a full search for contributions and disbursements, and then I'll show you how to pull a list. So we'll go to records and go to full search. And then we'll go ahead and do a contribution search. For a contribution search, typically you would always just search by date, usually within a date range. Typically whenever I have clients do a receipt transactions list, usually it's for the same type of reporting period perhaps that you're looking for. Otherwise, they usually have a date range that they're looking for. So, so I'm just going to go ahead and enter from the beginning of this month to today. Oops. You can also enter the deposit date if you wish. Of course, you would also have to enter the deposit date in the actual transaction, which some people do not. You can always enter the dollar amount if you're just searching for specific people who have contributed X amount of dollars. Instead of a single amount, there's also a cumulative amount if you like to search for it that way as well. And then we also have periods that you can search for if you just want to search for just general, just primary, or any other periods that you've included within your data set. Type, you can also filter the list according to which type you specifically want to see. And then any of these other fields, as you can see, you can also do a search for. So I'm just going to go ahead and just leave it by date since it's just a sample and I didn't really enter too much. Okay, so as you can see, this has two records within the transaction, which mainly is mine and I believe, yes, candidate committee that or a candidate that I've added earlier. If you wanted to do a disbursements list, it's pretty much the same thing as contributions, where you would just go to records, go to full search, and instead of contributions, you would just do a search for disbursements. Sorry about that. And again, you can always do a search by date, amount, cumulative amount, period, kind, etc. And you can see a list of all types of disbursements here. Now, to do a receipt transactions list or any of those, or disbursement transaction list report, you always have to have a current selection up. So before you do, before you can even do any of those reports, you want to make sure you pull the correct current selection. All right. So now that we have our current selection up, to pull a report, you would simply just go to Reports and click on System. Now the two reports, and this is listed in alphabetical order. Now the two reports that I will be showing you are, I'll show you before I actually click into them. The first one will be a disbursement transactions list, which is right here. And then the receipt transactions list, which is closer towards the bottom. It's right there. All right. So to run any of these, you would simply highlight the disbursement transaction list and click on Run. And a new window should come up. Now, you can narrow down the list by specific date range, item number, report criteria, periods, check status, or budget accounts. And you can also choose, if you've entered bank accounts within your data set, you can also choose which bank accounts that you wish for the information to pull from only. Now, for the date range, a thing that you should keep in mind is that just because you've pulled a current selection for transactions, for example, dating from the beginning of this month to the end, to today, actually, sorry, doesn't necessarily mean that when you pull this report and you leave it as 1/1/1901 to today, means that only the beginning of this month's transaction will show. If any of these records have disbursement transactions dating before the current selection, which is the beginning of this month, it will pull those transactions because this report that we're asking it to pull is dated for 1/1/1901. And then, so just keep that in mind whenever you're pulling a current selection, and your disbursements transactions list is showing transactions that are dated before the current selection, it mainly has to do with this report criteria here. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and change this to match what our current selection is. Then we'll go ahead and leave it to that. Then we'll go ahead and click OK. And depending on how many records are in your current selection, I only have 7, so that was pretty quick. But if you have thousands of records within your data set or within your current selection, this process could take 30 seconds to a minute. So don't worry, it's still working. Now you have several options here. You can either print the list, and I believe it's in a PDF format, which we're about to preview. You can also preview it, which we'll do soon, or you can just hit cancel, and then when you hit cancel, I will show you that the list, you can save it in a CSV format. So we'll go ahead and preview it first. Okay. And then this is the format that it will be printing out as well, in case you're wondering what the print will look like. And as you can see all the disbursements is listed in, I believe it's by date range and then alphabetical order. You can see the period that it's reporting to, the date, the name of the record, the type of disbursements that are listed, the check status, which normally I believe you can just ignore. The purpose field, if anything was typed in, including the word itemize, it will show up. Only on this report though, so don't worry about it showing up on the FEC or state report. And then the actual dollar amount. A key thing to note here is that although these are memo transactions here, the page total will still count them towards towards the amount. So something to keep in mind there. So when you're pulling the report to match with your federal reports, since typically memo transactions do not apply to towards your total, you would probably want to select all transactions and then remove any kind of memo transactions as well. And then to scroll through the pages, you would just go to this print preview toolbar here, and then kind of scroll through the pages. They're only 2 pages since we only have a few examples here. And then this will tell you the number of records that are in the report and a summary of report total. Okay. Let's go ahead and close this. And then to see this in a CSV format, you go ahead and hit either cancel or the X box here. And then this window will come up asking if do you wish to save the data from this report to an Excel spreadsheet. So we'll go ahead and just hit yes. And then let me save this to my desktop. And we'll go to, we'll label it webinar sample. Hit save. And then it should appear onto my desktop, which is a bit of a mess right now. Okay. And then here is the Excel spreadsheet of the same report that we just pulled. As you can see, it has the date, the amount, check number, check status, the period. This is just, it just means that this is for the primary period. So as you can see, the text period's over here. And you see, and these fields are already automatically populated. This is quite different from the export list that I showed you in the last webinar in the comma delimited format. These fields are already hard-coded so that you can't really add to or remove any of these fields. And these, instead of giving you, these will actually list all the transactions as opposed to last week's Excel spreadsheet, which only had, I believe it was last contribution, largest contribution, things of that nature. If you want to see all the transactions, you would need to pull a receipt transactions list or a disbursements transactions list. So we'll go ahead and close this. And go back to Campaign Manager. And then I'll show you again how to pull a receipt transactions list. Again, it's very similar. There's a date range. Now you have a deposit date range. There's a contact field that you can also do a search by if you filled in that information within the transactions. And of course, just like the disbursement, you can select periods, types, and sources as well. And then there's also the bank account options down here. So we'll go ahead and enter today's, or this month's date to today's date. Okay, oops. Let's see this. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem to like us very much right now. But I believe you would have the, normally you wouldn't get that error message there. But typically, it's the same thing as disbursements list, where when you're running it, it will come up with the print, preview, or cancel screen again. And if you print, it will print it in the PDF format. And then preview will have the same type of look as the disbursements, where it will list the date, the amount, and the name, and the receipt kind for the date range that you're looking for. And then the Excel spreadsheet will also have the same type of fields as well. I'm sorry about that. All right, so next I will show you how to pull a candidate loan, or how to enter a candidate loan, sorry. So first you'll go ahead and want to look for the candidate. And I just made one up, candidate Bob Smith from Candy Cane Lane here. Okay. So a few key things about a candidate record is that first you want to change the type to candidate. We previously had this to individuals. So you want to make sure you set this to candidate. And then typically for a candidate or candidate committee or PAC committees, you always want to enter their FEC ID number or candidate ID number over here in the voter ID. And this voter ID field, I mean, obviously it's a sample here, but you always want to make sure that it's correct. It's the correct one that you're typing in, because this voter ID is used to pull information such as the office that they're running in or the district that they're in charge of, things of those nature, onto your FEC report. So you definitely want to make sure that voter ID field is correct. On top of that, the voter ID field, or actually the number itself, is used to tie in transactions such as loans and loans repayment. And I'll get to that right now. So for loans made by the candidate or guaranteed by the candidate, you always want to enter it under contribution. I've already made one here, so I'll just quickly show you the details that you'll need. The date that the candidate has made the loan, you obviously entered it under date, the amount, what election is towards, and then you always want to make sure that for the type, you select loans made / guaranteed by candidate. You want to make sure you select the version that says guaranteed spelled out. There's, I believe, another version of it, which is right up here, loans made / guaranteed by candidate. This one will not pull correctly onto the FEC report, so make sure that you select the one that's spelled out completely. Okay, and under the note field, you want to add the words personal funds for your reporting purposes. And under the contact field, you want to enter the candidate's ID number again. And this will be used towards repayment of the loan. So definitely keep that in mind when you're entering loans made by the candidate. And then finally, what you have here, sorry, forgot about this. For if the candidate made multiple loans and you want to distinguish between which is which loan, the account field is where you would specify that. So I just put account 99 here just to make sure that you can distinguish between any of the other numbers that I've entered. And then, and now finally for the deposited section, this is for when the loan is due by. So I just entered basically 2 years from now. And once you have that information, you would obviously save it. And then to make a loan repayment or at least a partial repayment, that is made under the disbursement side in the candidate record. So as you can see, I made one again for our sample today. Now, you would obviously enter the date that you've made the loan payment. Doesn't necessarily have to match when the loan was made. I just entered yesterday's date just because I was making these records yesterday. You would enter the amount. If it's a partial payment, you can still just enter, partial repayment. You would enter the period. The kind would be repay loan made and then / guaranteed by candidate. And there's no other options. So this is just already shorthand for you. Under the item number, again, this is important to note that you need to enter the candidate's ID number again to tie in that this is a candidate loan. And then the account, you want to enter 99 because this is a payment towards that specific loan. Without entering that there wouldn't be a way to figure out, or there wouldn't be a way to tie in which loan that this is repaying, basically, if Bob Smith had different loan types or different loans. And again, once you enter these information, you would simply just save that. And then, again, towards the end, I will show you how this will appear on the report. Now, since we're on the subject of candidates or candidate records, candidate committee records, sometimes when you're running specifically FEC reports, you'll get a warning message saying that committee records or candidate records missing a few information such as like the address, what office they're in, etc. And you might be trying to wrap your head around this because the address is in here, but the FEC report isn't pulling the address. Well, that's because, and some of you might not even know this, is that Campaign Manager or PAC Manager pulls these information from a candidate file and a committee file that's kind of running in the background of Campaign Manager. And once in a while, especially with new campaigns or with newly installed Campaign Manager or PAC Manager, the list hasn't been updated yet. So to update your list, I'll show you this right now. To update your list, you would simply go up to Reports, go down to Federal, and then select Load Candidate List. Now you want to download the candidate file directly from the FEC. So go ahead and select this right here. And then once the drop-down menu becomes darkened, you want to scroll towards the bottom and select the cn10.zip file. And then once you hit OK, which we won't do now, when you hit OK, it will load and download all the candidate ID information and load it into your Campaign Manager dataset. Some advice that I would like to give is that I typically, you shouldn't be doing this during heavy filing period, such as when a monthly report is due, or especially when a quarterly report is due. And that's just because traffic to the FEC is pretty high. So typically downloading the list during non-peak hours would take about 2 to 3 minutes. However, if you are inclined to download during those peak hours, it could take half an hour to an hour, which would tie up your Campaign Manager, basically. So definitely update the list before your report is due. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and hit cancel. Oh, sorry. And this updates the candidate file. I will show you when we're about to file the FEC report where the committee files are. So we'll go ahead and hit cancel. Okay. Okay. And now, next thing I'll show you before we run the FEC report is how to enter credit card transactions. Typically, so the scenario here would be you have an American Express and you're paying off the credit card debt, and within that credit card debt is actually paying off multiple sub-vendors. So I'll show you how to enter those information in and how to link them in correctly. So I'm just going to go ahead and do a full search just so I can get a current selection up to show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so first you want to enter the credit card information. So here we have as a sample American Express. The record type should be set to vendor. And then since this is listed alphabetical order, vendor is towards the bottom. Now, when entering a credit card transaction, you would have to go under Disbursements. And then what you want to do is set the kind to operating expenditure. And since this is the credit card vendor, you want to enter this phrase right here, which is credit card : see below. And then you want to enter the date that you've that you paid off the credit card debt, or paid the credit card company, and the dollar amount that you've paid. And a key thing here is to tie in the credit card transactions, you have to enter a unique string of characters under the item number to tie the records together. So the reason why you want to make sure that it's unique, it's because assuming that you're you're using the credit card fairly often and it's paying off multiple sub-vendors, you don't want to enter something that you'll be using typically, like 1, 2, 3, in case you end up using it again accidentally. It'll tie unnecessary records together. So you always want to make sure that you've entered a unique ID number. Typically, I choose AE for American Express, and then I would just enter the date that the transaction is for. So I put 02/15/11. You can also put down 02/11 if you like. Just make sure that whatever you do put down, it is a unique string of characters. Now, when entering the sub-vendors, which I'll show you right now, for example, Amazon, again, you want to make sure the record is set to vendor, and under disbursements, the disbursement kind has to be set to memo. This way, when it pulls onto your report, it will not have an actual effect on your total dollar amount under disbursements. However, it will show up on your report as it should. So you would enter the date, the actual amount that's paid to the specific sub-vendor, in which case we made a payment to Amazon for $250. And again, you would enter the same item number that credit card transaction had. Okay. And then I'm just showing you the same thing for Aristotle. As you can see, disbursement kind is memo. We have the dollar amount, and as well as the unique string of character there. Now this next one for Ruth Chris, I had to type in the word itemize, and that's just because I know that when running this report, because of that $200 threshold, that this won't show up. Even though that this is tied in with the vendor American Express, which is obviously over the $200 threshold with $1,000. Individually, since Ruth Chris does not meet that itemization threshold, it will not pull through in the report. So to make it pull through, I had to type in the word itemize like I showed you in the previous records. So something to keep in mind if a sub-vendor isn't showing up with your report. Typically, you might want to check the amount that the report or the aggregate total that they've had for the disbursements. And again, have that unique string of character right there. Okay. Now that we have that credit card transaction tied, I will show you how it'll look like on an FEC report. Okay. So to write an FEC report, you would simply just go up to Reports, go down to Federal, and then select either Form 3 or Form 3X, depending on what type of committee you are. Now, you're going to see a bunch of error messages that are going to come up. This is just because this is a sample data set. You will not see these error messages, so don't panic when you see this. You will see this, however. This will ask you to do a live update when running the report. Usually, when you're doing a new install for Campaign Manager, you will not have to do an update. So you can, most of the time, you would be clicking no, but once in a while you might want to click yes to make sure you are running the latest FEC report. So for now, we'll go ahead and click no. And then these are the error message I will be just talking about. So bear with me for a minute. And without those error messages, this should show up. Now, the reporting period, there are set reporting periods that the FEC, when you're filing for a monthly or a quarterly report, that's where you would enter the report parameter. Since we're just running a sample, I just put yesterday's date, and I'll change it to today's date. Itemization threshold, this is what I was talking about, where typically the FEC only requires $200 transactions or more. So you can always change that to however little you like if you wish to itemize more transactions onto your report. Itemization threshold start date, you need to start whenever you would like the aggregate total to start adding up. That's when you would enter. You would enter the election date for your next election, or your upcoming election, sorry. Default primary and default general, whichever you're reporting to, those are what you would set to, whether they're the primary and general, or if you have specific cycles such as primary 2012 or general 2012, you can enter those as well. Quarterly, or the quarter reports, this is where you would select what type of report it is, whether it's a quarterly, year-end, mid-year, 12th day preceding, or 30th day following. So we'll just go ahead and leave that as that. For the current period, you would just select whichever period you're in. Most, if not all, would be in a primary, I believe. And then under Form 3 schedules, here is where you would want to make sure you select cover page first, and then any other schedules that you wish to print out at the same time. Now, I'm going to show you how to update that candidate list, or the committee list that I was talking about earlier. To do that, you would select the Settings tab, and then click on Load FEC Committee File. And again, this window is very similar to the candidate one. You would select the Download Committee File directly from the FEC. And then you would scroll down, and again, you would select cm10.zip. And then you would just hit OK, and it will go through the process of downloading the new committee file. And again, you definitely don't want to do this during peak hours when filing is very heavy with the FEC, since it's downloading it directly from them. So we'll go ahead and hit cancel. And we'll go ahead and run the report. This is where you would enter the cash on hand at the beginning of the reporting period. I'm not going to enter anything since we're just running it to show you. Once you're done, you would hit print. Right here is where you would enter column B of line 11AI from your last report, and column B of 11AI2 from your last report. And these are just arbitrary numbers. You don't have to worry about that. And then set signature to today's date. If you're missing any employer occupation information, you can always check fill missing employers with information requested for both employers and occupation. And then if there's any discrepancy, which of course there is here because I've just entered any kind of amount, this will tell you that this is what the database is showing that should be reporting on your in your column B. However, your hand-entered figures, which is what I entered earlier, shows this amount. So there is a bit of a discrepancy. Okay, and then it will come to this page asking you to save your file. You can type in whatever you like. Just make sure that it ends with .fec. Otherwise, it won't let you save the report. And this is just telling me that one already exists, and I'll just replace it. Okay. And then this message will come up saying whether you have errors or warning messages. And if you have error messages, these fatal errors will not allow you to file with the FEC. You would simply have to take a look. Once you scroll down here, these will tell you what's wrong with your report. If you have no idea what this is referring to, you're always more than welcome to give us a call saying, you can always copy these error messages and email them over to us saying, I got these error messages when filing for my Form 3. Can you help me resolve this? And typically we will be able to tell you, you know, you're missing your treasurer's information. This is how you fill it in. Warning messages are, if there are warning messages, you can still file your report. However, the FEC might come back with a warning letter saying, hey, this information was missing, why is it missing? And you might need to file an amendment. So we'll go ahead and print the form. And then this is what your FEC report should look like. As you can see, column A, reporting period covering. I'll just scroll down to show you the transactions. As you can see here, the transactions showing. Bob Smith's loans, it's right there. And then for disbursements, it's showing right here. For the credit card, American Express, credit card C below. And then all the memos down here, it just cut off here because of the page break. But the memo is listed down below, where you can see Amazon, Aristotle, Ruth Chris. And Ruth Chris actually shows up here with no itemized word down here. And actually, I'm glad that it cut off because, as you can see, the subtotal is 0 because these are all memo transaction, as opposed to up here where you can see the actual transactions adding up for the page. And then here we have is Bob Smith's repayment loan. And then for Schedule C, you can see Bob Smith's loan, as well as any kind of cumulative payment to date and balance outstanding at the close of this period. Sorry. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and show you, I'm going to log into a different data set, another local data set, sample data set, to show you our fundraising and fat cats, basically, feature that we have here. So for the fundraising feature, I'm going to just go ahead and go into it. And I'll show you what this does. I'm just pulling up a current selection for our demo here. Okay, so to see a fundraising section, you have to click on this green F button right here. And basically what this does is you can set kind of like pledge goals for your committee. As you can see here, we have a test of a target of $1,000. And actually, to create a personal pledge, or not personal pledge, a new target group, you would simply just go up to Records, Solicitation, and you would select Manager. And if you need to create a new test group, you would simply just go ahead and click on New, and then type in the target amount, and then the name of the target group. And then you would click on Save. If you need to edit one, you would just highlight one that we already have here, click on Edit, and then edit whatever you would like. Okay. The neat thing about this is that, and this won't work unless you have a current selection up. So, you would need to create a current selection of people you plan on calling to make a personal pledge for to your committee. So I've just done an example for Lincoln Diaz Ballard campaign. There's no any kind of affiliation. This is just a campaign that I picked out just to show you as an example. So for the personal pledge, if the person you called would like to make a personal pledge towards towards your target, give me 1 second. I'm just going to go ahead and just select the Lincoln Diaz Ballard campaign. I've already entered a pledge for them. If you need to add another pledge, or if this is another different record, to add a pledge, you would simply hit the plus sign and then enter the date that they made the pledge, the amount, and then the group that this is for, which is the test group. And you can select a solicitor if there was a solicitor involved. If not, you can just leave that blank. And then hit the Save button to make sure that the pledge is saved. All right. To add, once the person has paid off the pledge, to add a payment, you would simply click on the $, and then you would enter the amount that that they made towards that pledge. So we'll go ahead and hit, let's say they gave half of that, $250. We'll hit OK. And then the contribution edit screen should come up. You would probably have to select the primary, or sorry, select the period, not the primary. And then the source will be from the pledges, and the receipt type, or the type, should be left to receipts. And then you go ahead and click on Save Changes. Okay. And then, oops, Save Changes. Okay. If you have a call list, if you want to make a note in the person's record that you've made a call to them, what you would do is just hit the plus sign to bring up an issue box. And then what you can do is just enter the date that you've called them, and then enter a little note field down here that maybe they've made a pledge, or they weren't at home, so you'll call back later. Anything that you would like, and it would create a sub-issue field for within the record. Now, a neat thing about this is that under compliance/vetting, and this, you have to forgive me, it's a little bit, they're streamlining it currently right now, but what you can do is under compliance/vetting is that this will actually connect to the FEC, and you'll connect to the FEC, and if show if this is a candidate committee, under Lincoln Diaz Ballard campaign, you can see how much they've donated in the past to other committees. And unfortunately, we're running out of time here, so trying to wait for this. Just know under compliance/vetting, you should be able to see a list of specifically Lincoln Diaz Ballard campaign, how much they've donated to other committees. So unfortunately, since we're running out of time, I'm going to go ahead and end the session. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to give us a call at our customer support line or email us at support@aristotle.com. Thank you. Have a good day.